Hey, I'm Morgan Spurlock, director of One Direction, This Is Us, and you're watching RedEye. Get your tickets to the movie now before it sells out.
How does listening to nothing but One Direction for about 180 days compare to eating McDonald's for 30 days?
It's addictive. Once it gets in your brain, it doesn't go away. I can't tell you how many nights I woke up singing One Direction songs.
Really?
And still to this day, like I'll be
singing out loud or just having it in your head?
Oh, it's in my head. But then I'll be walking down the street and I'll find myself actually humming or singing One Direction song. And I go and I'm like, oh yeah, that's the one thing right now as I'm walking down the street. There it is. Oh yeah, you got that one thing.
What techniques did you use to actually get it out of your head?
I'm listening to a lot of Robin Thicke going hey hey. So now that's kind of being shoved into my head by everybody else.
Super catchy stuff
that's
that you can just knock out the other stuff. It's like shuffleboard.
It's like every time I walk out of every time I turn on the radio or walk out of my house now, Robin Thicke is on somewhere. So now that's what's kind of become the dominant musical song that's around my life right now.
Well, I found the movie enjoyable,
right.
Much more so than like the Katy Perry doc or the Justin Bieber doc, and I think a lot of it is because they're such entertaining characters.
Yeah, they're charismatic. They're really fun.
And just normal and amusing. But I was also thinking that everything you hear lately with all the Bieber nonsense going on is how, well, when anyone is 19, they go through, they do stupid stuff and they make all these mistakes. But it occurred to me that, at least based on the movie, it seems like these guys aren't going through that. Why is that?
I think that the biggest thing that's different between them and somebody like a Justin Bieber is there's a few things. One is I think that they've been incredibly smart about surrounding themselves with people who will say that's not a good idea. They aren't surrounded by yes men. I think they're surrounded by people who question the things they want to do. The band actually gets to make the decisions of what happens with the band. Like they vote democratically, the 5 of them. Are we going to add more dates to the tour? Are we going to have matinees? Are we going to have this sponsor? Are we going to do X, Y, or Z? It's remarkable.
How easily do those decisions get made?
Well, it's a democracy. 3 out of 5 decide. Look, there's 5 guys in the band. So once 3 people vote one way, the decision's done. And I think the other reason why they've had kind of no Bieber-esque moments is because each guy has 4 other guys that is constantly there to ground them and bring them back and support them. I think they have created a tight bond with one another, a real kind of brotherly bond, and they look out for each other.
Sure.
Yeah.
Needless to say, pretty much all their songs, as far as I know, are pretty much about love.
Yeah.
We don't really get much sense of their relationships with young girls from the film, but I'm wondering how much you think they know about love or kind of understand what they're singing.
I think that when you're 19 to 21, when I was a teenager, you have incredibly idealistic ideas of love. You think things should be perfect and should be in a certain way, and I think that granted, they probably have a much more realistic view than other kind of 19, 21-year-olds because they're much more worldly now and have kind of really gotten to go out and experience a lot more than other folks. But I think that, what they're singing and what they do, one of my favorite lines in the whole movie is the girl who, when we were in Spain, which I think sums up the film and sums up their success so well, is they say what we want to hear, but no other boys will say to us. Like, that's the best. That's it. That's exactly what it is. That's why they're successful, because they say what no other boys will say.
But they're not writing the songs, right?
Well, they're writing songs now with songwriters. So
the previous hits and stuff.
For the first ones, on the first album, no. Second album, they wrote I think 4 or 5 with songwriters. Now on the next album, they're co-writing almost everything with folks.
As I said, the movie doesn't really. I think a question that anyone would be thinking when it comes to a popular touring band of young men is some of the especially with millions of women around the world wanting to be close to them, is the question of the relationships with young women, groupies, that kind of thing.
Sure.
We don't see that in the film, but I think it's fair to ask kind of what you observed while you were making the movie, because it really speaks to what their lives are like and how they handle all this attention.
I mean, I think they're really good. I mean, there's women that are chasing them constantly, and I think that they're 19 to 21. There are girls all the time back at the hotels that are you'll go to a hotel and there'll be girls that'll ride the elevators all night long just hoping for a chance to meet them, that are like coming up in the stairwells and banging on the doors, and if security opens the door, like 3 or 4 of them will dart through and like antelopes, they're like running through the hallways, and the security's trying to like keep them to get them back out of the hallways where the guys are. But I think that they are they're very aware of kind of who they are and where they are, and they've been very smart to avoid a lot of, I think, the pitfalls that other people haven't.
Why did you not want to include some of that stuff when, to me, that seems like a key component of what it's like to be in One Direction?
I mean, I think that, because, well, for me, it's not all, like, because a lot of the girls that are at the hotel that are chasing them are like 12, 13-year-old girls. And so
I'm sure there's some 18 and 19-year-olds too, though.
There are, but I think that for me, it's a gamut of people. There are moms that were at the hotel that are riding elevators up and down trying to meet the boys, and for me, when just the whole relationship side was one of those things where, like, whether because there are guys in the bands who have girlfriends and have had girlfriends and still have girlfriends, and I really wanted to avoid the relationship conversation for a few reasons. One is ultimately, who knew if their girlfriends were still going to be around when the movie came out? As you start getting into like a real relationship story, how much of that relationship story do you want to tell? And
but they spend a lot of the time in the movie wondering how long they're going to be around. So that that doesn't stop you from making the movie about them.
But it's different. It's different than me wondering if am I still going to have a career versus a girlfriend who's going to be in the movie who may or may not be a girlfriend at the time, and when the movie comes out, somebody's upset that this person's in the film,
That's
or
fair.
the girlfriend's upset that she's not, or that she's still in the film. When the relationship's over. So those are two very different animals. That's why I think one of the things that I love in the film is where Liam's talking about. In the movies, like, I want somebody who can just appreciate me for me. To suddenly become that successful, and now that's who they see. Oh my gosh, here's that very rich, successful pop star. That's the guy that I want to be with. Like, to find somebody who doesn't know who you are, it's like he'd have to go to, like, Madagascar. I mean, I don't know. It's like, but they're probably famous there too. It's like I can't imagine where you go in One Direction right now where a girl doesn't know you're in One Direction.
They're going to have to tour like an island in which 4 people live.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. That's the place.
Although if there's only 4 women there.
Yeah, where you find. Yeah, exactly. Well, then it's like, sorry, you're out. But luckily Zayn's got a girlfriend, so it'll be fine.
Ooh, that's really
yeah.
Well, something else I couldn't help but wonder is, they talk about how much they spend all their time together. They feel like brothers.
Yeah.
I feel like most people would say in that situation, brothers are going to have a lot of conflict, spending all day together. But there's no fighting in the movie. Is that because they don't fight, or what do you see?
I think there
must be some conflict there.
The conflict is so few and far between. It's so rare of stuff that they don't agree on. Simply because I think that when they go home, like they have time when they go away and they go off and see their families, then when they go and spend time with their homes, then they don't see each other. They don't talk to one another. Then they hook back up when they're back out on the road. So I feel like they love those moments when they're together because it is such special moments. They're getting to experience something that 99.999% of Earth will never get to experience. I mean, it's an incredible thing that's happening in their lives. And so I feel like when they're together, they appreciate that, and they appreciate the fact that if it wasn't for you 4 other guys, I wouldn't be here.
Yeah, it's a sobering moment when they kind of realize, like, this could be as good as our lives ever get, and it's kind of all downhill from here. How long do you think they can last?
That's a great question. And I think what I love about them is they are very self-aware. I think they're very self-aware about where they are. I think they're very self-aware about kind of the music that they're making and kind of how they need to continue to change and grow if they want to stay relevant and stay connected with audiences and fans.
It would be hard to think of a boy band that lasted more than 5 years ever. Right?
Yeah. I'm trying. Yeah, I think of like a straight boy band, but that's the thing is like it depends on how they evolve. Can they evolve in a way where they don't just seem like a boy band, where they continue to do something different and age up? What happened when I first met the band last June and I went to the concert. I went to meet them in Charlotte, North Carolina, and when I went to the show, the audience was probably predominantly, it was very young, probably 11 to 16-year-olds was the core audience of the people that were in that show. And then when they started their tour this year, in February, the matinees still had a very young skewing audience, but then the nighttime shows, the 8 o'clock shows, suddenly had this mass contingency of like 18 to 34-year-old women. Like their audience had aged up tremendously, literally in less than a year. And I think if they can continue to not only age up their audience, but cater to that audience musically. And this new album that they were working on, like you see in the film when they're recording Best Song Ever in the hotel, they were recording like song after song after song while they were traveling through Europe and doing the same thing now in the States. Like you hear some of the songs and I'm like, I'd buy that song. Like there's songs they're making now that are definitely taking them in a much more mature, different direction.
And if Martin Scorsese likes them, I think any man can feel fine.
And if Marty's, I like it. I like it. I like your stuff. You know, then it's then you know what? Then maybe we should all give it a shot when the next film comes out. It's good. I've been working on it. I like it.
If I were De Niro, could you give me how you would direct me?
You got to work a little harder on your lines. You got to get it. You're not so bad. You got to think a little harder. You got to do a little more. Like you got to get it. When he's going to punch you in the face, once you're going to punch him back. He's going to punch you, and you got to punch him in the head.
That was good. I can see you spend some time on that.
It's my Scorsese impression. I like it.
What do you think a movie would be like if One Direction made a documentary about Morgan Spurlock?
It'd be the most unwatched movie ever. It's would they each take parts? Like each one of them would direct a section, so it becomes like this omnibus piece of like each five people directing like the 5 obstructions. That's what it becomes. It becomes like the Lars von Trier documentary of me,
right? Made
by One Direction. Yeah, a couple people might see that. Not very many.
Well, I imagine they have to do some kind of musical interpretation of your life. How would that go?
Very badly. Luckily, the difference is I grew up the youngest of 3 ballet dancing brothers. So I grew up dancing. So my film would actually have some dancing in it, whereas they're very anti-dancing.
Touché.
See, yeah, yeah.
Oh, so they'd actually have to learn to dance better to play you,
or they would just force me to dance as like I'm dancing in the film that they're directing.
As any good documentary filmmaker.
That's right, exactly. Dance.
Well, I have to ask, to what extent do you think a movie like this has a certain limitation in terms of what it can show? Because you're there to get the story, you're there to try to show people something that they haven't seen.
Yeah.
At the same time, there's no denying that huge artists like this or Katy Perry or whatever it may be, they're a brand, and the chances of including something controversial are probably slim, either because of the way that you feel as a filmmaker, or you're feeling like a responsibility to them.
Sure.
Do you think there's a limit in what you can really deliver with this sort of thing?
I mean, I think that as the whole goal for me in making this film was to make something that kind of gave you a window into their world, and everybody has tough moments, or there was days when we were shooting where somebody didn't want the camera to be rolling, or it's like, and you got to give people space. I mean, when you're that much in somebody's face all the time, and there's some times when somebody's having a bad day and they're like, listen, I just can't deal with this right now, and you have to give them that time. So there's moments where you could push and like try and put things like that in the film, but at the end of the day, you want to feel like you're creating something that is going to truly resonate who they are. And I think that's what this film does. I think the film kind of gives you a real sense into them and into their lives and into what they deal with, and takes you on that ride. And it's fun. Like I think this movie is so fun, and for me that's the most important thing.
Well, was there any agreement beforehand about anything that you would or would not do? I'm sure they were a little bit worried about.
Well, the band ultimately, the one thing that they said is I think their contract they made that they have with Sony, basically they said we will have the right to remove anything that we don't agree with that's in the film. Yeah, which there was nothing in the film. There was nothing. Out. There was nothing taken out. There was the bigger thing. There was stuff that we put back in. That they thought was important. Like they thought it was important that people know that that there was a time when they didn't get along. When they like way back in the beginning when they almost like kicked Zayn out of the band. When that was like a conversation that was had. Like that was something they're like, no, this is something that we should be in there because people should know that we do have those conversations. Louis wanted to make sure that when he went home that we saw his grandmother. When he went home to see his grandma, so we made sure that went back into the family scene.
How much does that impact the way that you make the movie, though? Because obviously, like this is your movie, and
it doesn't.
If they're in control to a certain extent of what gets in, it must be in the back of your mind a little of like, if there's something I'm curious about that might be seen as controversial, they could just say no.
But I mean, ultimately, then you have to go to bat for things, and for me, goal from the beginning was to make the best movie possible. And that's all I wanted to do. I wanted to make the absolute best film I could, and I think we did. And you never. What you realize is when you're shooting in the field, you never censor yourself in the field. You never edit in the field. You never edit while you're shooting. Then you get in the edit room, and you never edit, before the film's done, or you never remove things before you make the best movie possible. And along the way, we're making cuts. We're showing the studio. We're continuing to revise cuts, and we're showing the studio, and then we show the band. And at that point, there was nothing in the film that I took out.
Is there anything you're still wondering about them?
I mean, the biggest thing for me is I wonder kind of what will continue to happen. I mean, for me, it's much more about like what's next. It's like, where are they going? Like, what's going to happen after this? How long will they be able to kind of sustain? I mean, it's exhausting. The track that they're on is a really exhausting track. They're performing. They're doing 134 live shows this year. They're doing. They're traveling to. I mean, I don't even know how many countries in total, how many cities. But to be like a pop star on like the level of that they are, it's work all the time. Like they're up, they're doing press, they're doing photo shoots, they're doing interviews, they're recording their album, they're going to the arena, they're coming home after the arena, they're recording more on the album, and they go to bed. And people are like, oh, it's easy, these guys aren't doing anything. But when I look at what I was doing at like 19 to 21, as I'm like, you know, at a frat party doing a keg stand, you know, and here these guys are having an immense amount of responsibility to an army of people. You know,
there's like no time to ride elevators and meet women.
That's right. Exactly. What are you going to do? And it's, you know, for me, it's, that's why a tremendous amount of respect, you know, goes to them, because, I mean, if I was 19 to 21, I don't know if I could have suddenly handled being thrust into that situation. And it wasn't even 19. Like, you had to think, when they went and auditioned for X Factor and then were put together as a band, they were 16, some of them. Like, Harry was 16 when that started.
Right.
So now between 16 and 19 was kind of where that all happened. And now here they are, 1921. I mean, it's remarkable.